Welcome to Gone with the Wind, chapter 17 to 30. Yes, sorry about not being able to publish any videos last week about Gone with the Wind, but I'm trying to go back on schedule right now. Let's start off with this summaries, part 3, which is aka chapter 17 to 30. Like how parts 1 and part 2 were chapters 1 to 16, and now it's like chapter 17 to 30, so it gets a pretty good fit. Now, let's get to start with Gone with the Wind. Part 3, we still follow our very dear old Scarlet, and our Scarlet herself has become one of the most it's not right to call her tough. It's more right to call her say, yeah, I still cling on to this last hope of him still being alive. I still cling on to this world. I still cling on to this thinking that, hey, he's still alive. I can still do this. He's still there. There's still something to live for, and that kind of stuff. And who is this he that she's talking about? Well, it's our very old and very dear old Ashley. Not Red would be terrible. Our very dear old Ashley. And our Ashley himself would feel that this is one of the best things that could ever happen to him. Except he's in jail. More specifically, enemy jail. And because he was in enemy jail, there's like very little news from him. In fact, there is literally no news from him. And so they're all sad and very worried. Inside their minds are like, Ashley, whatever happened to him? And they try to go ahead and stop thinking about Ashley. So how does that go out? Well, that doesn't go out well either. Oh, and Ashley's wife, Melanie, is pregnant, so, well, Ashley must have been gone for less than a year. In fact, it could have been like 6 months at least. And then Melanie herself, she went ahead and realized that, hey, maybe this is about time I can do something about this. Maybe this is about time I can do, yeah. So, what do we do? What does she do? Well, she's pregnant now, and she's pretty well into her pregnancy as well, too. And now, here's bad news. Atlanta is under siege by the Yankees. Let me just redraw that, because Confederates are red, and the Yankees are going to be blue. Atlanta is blockaded by the Yankees, except for some reason, this one little railroad. Oh, God. In between the Yankees, blockade, there's still one railroad that is still functioning that the Confederates are using to get out of Atlanta. Now, of course, everyone is believing that the Confederates will stay and fight the Yankees, and they might win, but then they realize, the Confederates do finally realize something. The Confederates are smarter, but they cannot afford losses, whereas the Yankees are dumb, but they can brute force their way to winning this war, because, well, they have so many men, they can afford to lose like several hundred thousands of men. And so they all decide to go ahead and retreat before the Yankees go ahead and decimate this railroad too. We should just destroy the whole railroad. Yeah, decimate the railroad too. So before that happens, the Confederates are escaping through that route. And it finally realized that, well, during that retreat, Melanie is starting to go ahead and give birth. Melanie is starting to go ahead and go through her labor. And the black slave Prissy is all like, yeah, I know all about Top. And then when this actually happens, Scarlett's all like, oh, I'll help her. And she's like, actually, I lied. I have zero idea on how to even do childbirth. How much do you know? Probably about as much as you do. And the first time of her life, Scarlett finally smacked her. And because she smacked her, well, nothing good exactly came out of it. So what happened then? Nothing much. Oh, and throughout that entire child labor, they went ahead and went through a long and very painful child labor. And when Melanie finally was able to give birth to her child, it was one that was very sweet, and it was one that wasn't exactly the best condition ever. What in the end happened? Well, not much really happened, except for the fact that, hey, none of them were able to go ahead and keep themselves going. When that child came out, it was a boy, and they were all relieved and stuff, but then they realized that they need to evacuate the city immediately because Atlanta was deserted. So they got their old buddy old pal Rhett, who I should say is not exactly their old buddy old pal. They went ahead and realized that, hey, could you help us get out of Atlanta? He's like, sure. And then they went outside, stopped at the fort, and he's like, I'm abandoning you now. And they're like, what? I'm abandoning you because I want to join the army. But you hate the army. Exactly, but you hate the army more, so I'm gonna join them. At least apparently that's what Scarlet would have thought, or at least that's what I imagined her to have thought. And so they were abandoned, and then Scarlet had to take the role of Rhett, and she drove the entire way, all the way back to their home of Tara. And along the way of their going to Tara, they went through several misadventures. Apparently, the slave has no idea what it means to be a slave, and stuck up to her master a lot, eventually being whipped by her instead of like whipping the horse. And then finally, when they arrived at the Tara plantation, they all realized, okay, it's here. Hopefully someone's still here. And through lots of struggles and the baby being hungry because, well, there's no milk. Her mother has zero milk because she hasn't eaten anything in like a month or month. They went to the house and they realized there were still people there. Tara was burned, but it was still quite populated. And they went ahead and lived their life there. And they went pretty comfortably as well there too. Not too comfortably, but more comfortably than they ever did in Atlanta. They didn't have that many provisions, but the food wasn't too plenty, but they did have apples and potatoes, and apparently there was a little bit of wine and whiskey that was buried, but was a little bit outdated, I suppose, but still drinkable. Alcohol's alcohol whenever you do whatever you want. And when that happened, they stayed like that for a while, spent through Christmas, and when the army came by and they were like, yeah, we need help, and well, Scarlett reluctantly helped them because, well, it was her duty for the great cause of the Confederate States of America. And as soon as they came, one of them just decided to stay behind. His name was Will, because he had a wooden leg, and he was all like, yeah, I can help with this plantation, and then he helped with his plantation. And then one day they finally got a letter from Ashley. Ashley's like, I'm walking all the way from Illinois to here. You can await my arrival until then. Weeks pass by and there's no sign of Ashley, and they all realize that Ashley's not going to come home. And then one day, when they realize that there's another soldier that came, they're all like, yeah, it's just another soldier. And then they realize that this old soldier is blonde, has a pretty big long beard, and looks like Ashley. And then Melanie becomes super happy and decides to be all like, yay, it's Ashley. And then Scarlett also wants to go run after him too, but then Will stops her, saying that it is her husband after all. And then she goes ahead and looks on with disgust and jealousy. And that's just about it. That's about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed Gone with the Wind Part 3 summary. It's pretty brief, but I think it covers through all the points pretty well. And if you have any complaints, tell me in the comments below. Until next time, hopefully before next week, bye bye. 去好now, peace.